Hey everyone, welcome to the Guiding You Forward podcast presented by Mountain America Credit Union. I'm Kristalina Brown, and with us today we have Rob Woolhoff. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Kristalina. How are you?
Doing so well. Thank you so much. Even though we're kind of in a weird time right now, aren't we?
It's a very unprecedented time for sure.
Yes. So thank you, COVID-19, for keeping us all on our toes with all of this uncertainty and fear that we have. We're going to talk a little bit about fraud scams. And amidst COVID-19, we obviously have SOS scams we want to be aware of. Could you elaborate on that for us, Rob?
It's a social engineering scam. And by social engineering, what I mean is it's basically your classic like con man scam where somebody engineers the social interaction to get the information that they need so that when really you're actually giving them information. So let me give you an example.
Okay.
So let's say that one of our listeners has grandchildren and they get a call from somebody the caller says, "Hey grandma, it's your favorite grandson." And then the grandmother responds, "Oh, Johnny, how are you doing?" So see, that's an example of social engineering, because now what happened is the person that was called, the elderly person, gave away the name of the grandson, and without even realizing it. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about social engineering. And this scheme actually happened to a woman that I dealt with a couple of years ago. She was called by a fraudster who claimed to be her grandson, and the grandson claimed to be in Spain and had been arrested, and that he needed $2,500 to get out of jail. And if he didn't get $2,500 by tomorrow, that he was going to go to prison in Spain. And of course he said, "Don't call mom and dad. I don't want them to worry. They don't know that I'm in Spain, or they didn't want me to go," right? So she went into the local branch. She withdrew $2,500 in cash that she was going to take in Western Union over to somewhere, so that allegedly her grandson could get out of jail in Spain. Well, the branch manager tried to talk to her and try to explain that this is a scam, tried to convince her to call her daughter, the boy's mother, to make sure that he was in Spain. I talked to her and tried to convince her. And finally, we were able to convince her to call her daughter and just ask how, quote unquote, Johnny was doing. And finally she said, "Yeah, I can do that." And then she did. She called her mother, asked how Johnny was doing. She said he's fine. She asked where he was at. She said, "Oh, he's at home asleep on the couch." And so he's not in Spain. No, he's not in Spain. And so that was a way that we were able to convince her that it was a scam. She redeposited the $2,500 into her account, and so that was an exciting win for us, and we were very happy to have that outcome. Unfortunately, those don't always end that way.
I mean, yeah, so they're playing off of our love of each other, right? Good grief. Of course she wants to help her grandson.
Right. And that comes back to that. It comes back to what I was saying about emotion versus logic. So the emotion in this case was a concern and a love for her grandson and wanting to help. And it takes a lot of effort to overcome that emotion. And this same type of scheme could very easily be leveraged against someone who's not an elderly person, against anyone who gets approached by social media by a friend that says, "Hey, my father has been diagnosed with COVID-19 and he's not doing well, and we can't pay the hospital bills, and they're going to discharge him if we don't come up with $2,500." And there's just so many different ways that somebody could try to convince someone that there's this critical, urgent need. And because we live in communities where we want to help, where we live in communities where we want to help our neighbors, we want to help each other, we're charitable, we're good citizens, and fraudsters prey on that and take advantage of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Good grief. Well, thank you again so much for your time, you guys. We're grateful for all of you that are listening in. And I think as it stands with so many of our closing greetings during this crazy time is to, Rob, stay safe and stay healthy, right?
Thank you, Kristalina. You too.
Okay, thank you.
In review, fraudsters or scammers use social engineering to get the information they need from you. In Rob's example, the scammer was able to get his victim's grandson's name through a simple phone call. Fraudsters will also prey on critical urgent needs and your emotions. Be sure to practice restraint if there's any claims that you must act now. Now, if you feel like you've become a victim of fraud, it is important to act fast. Be sure to reach out to your financial institution immediately. Lock your accounts, freeze your credit, change your passwords, and to prevent future fraud, set up fraud alerts, check your accounts weekly, and finally, check your credit report at minimum annually. Stay safe and healthy, everyone.